I am Stephanie Ward, 27 years old, and my life has been a fight to be taken seriously. My family always branded me the dramatic one, the attention seeker who made it all up. But that night at our Minneapolis family dinner, everything changed. I choked on my food, my chest tightened, and I could barely draw a breath. Mom snapped, "Quit faking it!" Her voice cutting through the chatter. My sister piled on, sneering. I was just dodging cleanup duty. As my face turned purple and my hands clawed at the table, they still thought it was an act. Then my brother made a call that changed everything. The EMT stormed in, checked my pulse, and yelled for a stretcher. Suddenly, the room exploded in panic. What happened next? It nearly ended me, but it exposed a truth they'd buried for years. Before I tell you more, I'm curious, what time is it where you're listening, and which city are you in? I'm thrilled to know how far my story's reaching. Growing up in the Ward household in Minneapolis meant enduring one unbreakable rule: weakness was not tolerated. My mother, Karen Ward, managed our home like she handled her nursing shifts at the community clinic, with strict schedules and zero patience for excuses. She stood 5 feet 7 inches tall, her hands steady from years of patient care, and her tone always carried that edge of authority that brooked no argument. Dad's death in a car crash when I was 5 left her to raise me, my older sister Tiffany, and my younger brother Travis on her own. Any hint of vulnerability got crushed under lectures about toughing it out or facing real hardships. From my earliest recollections, illness meant skepticism rather than care. At 7, a sore throat made swallowing agony, but Mom forced me to school anyway, insisting I was avoiding chores. The teacher sent me home with confirmed strep throat, and the doctor warned about potential complications from the delay, yet Mom dismissed it as my overreaction. That started the cycle. Tiffany, 3 years my senior, and Mom's shadow amplified it all. With her confident stride and quick judgments, she'd say things like, "Stephanie's being dramatic again," during family meals, ensuring the label stuck. The only ally I had was Travis, 3 years younger, and the quiet fixer in our house. He'd slip me water or a blanket when attacks hit, sitting silently until I steadied, even if it meant defying Mom's no-coddling policy. The dismissals piled up through childhood. In middle school at 10, asthma episodes left me wheezing and panicked, but Mom called them attention grabs to skip gym class. Tiffany would smirk and add, "She's fine, just watch." One severe attack landed me in urgent care. After I collapsed during recess, the inhaler prescribed only after hours of untreated distress. By 13, a bike fall broke my arm, pain surging like electricity, but Mom made me complete yard work, first convinced it was a bruise from clumsiness. The X-ray showed the fracture, and the delay caused extra swelling, but no remorse followed, only a reminder to be more careful. These incidents etched deep doubts in me. Maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe others handled pain better. I internalized it, pushing through fevers and aches without complaint, which oddly reinforced their view that earlier issues were fabrications. High school migraines doubled me over in nausea, confining me to dark rooms, but Mom attributed them to hormonal excuses for missing homework. Tiffany, then in college for education, would phone in with laughs, still pulling that routine. One migraine revealed a sinus infection needing antibiotics, but by then I'd failed a quiz and earned extra chores as punishment. Escape came with acceptance to medical school at the University of Minnesota, 200 miles away in a bustling campus environment. Roommates like Danielle never doubted my symptoms. She'd adjust lights or fetch meds without question. Professors extended deadlines for legitimate health needs, validating me for the first time. I specialized in pulmonology, drawn ironically to respiratory issues after my asthma history. Graduation brought clarity and resolve. Their gaslighting had warped my self-trust, so I started documenting it all. A discreet notebook captured every past dismissal, the ignored strep delayed fracture, mocked asthma. As technology advanced, I incorporated voice recordings from holiday visits, catching Mom's curt denials or Tiffany's sarcastic jabs. This evolved into my long-term project. Reviewing entries in my dorm late nights, I'd connect the dots of neglect, fueling a quiet determination. Someday, I vowed, this evidence will force them to see. Post-residency, I secured a pulmonology position at a St. Paul clinic, limiting family contact to obligatory calls and brief trips with exit strategies. Interactions stayed superficial, avoiding triggers. But the healthcare cuts during economic shifts hit hard. My clinic downsized, and as a junior specialist, I was laid off. Savings evaporated under loans and rent pressures. After months of fruitless applications, I relented and returned to Minneapolis, accepting Mom's offer of the garage guest room rent-free until stability returned. Travis, working as a lab technician nearby, welcomed me warmly. Tiffany, teaching at a local elementary school, offered vague networking tips through her contacts. This homecoming differed. I'd packed not just clothes, but hidden recording devices, subtle cameras disguised in everyday items ready to capture unfiltered reactions. As an unusual fatigue crept in that week, accompanied by a nagging calf ache suggesting deeper trouble, I felt a grim anticipation. Their pattern would surface again, but this time on record. If they dismissed what could be serious, it would seal their own fate. The family dinner loomed as the ideal stage where old habits might play out under my watchful lens. The healthcare cuts hit like a freight train. My pulmonology job at the St. Paul clinic vanished when budget slashes targeted newer hires. Student loans and city rent burned through my savings in 4 months, leaving me no choice but to pack up and head back to Minneapolis. Mom's offer of the guest room above her garage came with strings she expected me to earn my keep. I pulled into our suburban driveway, the familiar chill of Minnesota's late fall biting through my jacket, carrying not just my bags, but a discreet arsenal, hidden cameras and recording devices tucked into my purse and coat pockets. My years of documenting their dismissals in a notebook had evolved. This time I'd capture undeniable proof on video. If Mom and Tiffany fell back into their old pattern of calling me dramatic, I'd have them on tape exposing the gaslighting I'd endured for decades. The family dinner was Mom's monthly ritual, a forced gathering in our cozy fireplace-lit dining room to keep us close. With me back home, she dumped the planning on me, saying it was time I contributed something worthwhile. I spent days scrubbing the house, drafting a menu, and shopping for ingredients, all while juggling job applications for remote medical consulting gigs. The pressure to make everything flawless was crushing. Any mistake would fuel their narrative of my incompetence. But beneath the stress, a strange calm settled in. My cameras were ready, one clipped inside my bag, another disguised as a phone charger on the counter, both angled to catch the dining table. If they dismissed me again, it'd be their downfall. 3 days before the dinner, an unusual tiredness hit me. My body felt sluggish, like wading through mud, and a dull ache pulsed in my right calf. By evening, climbing the stairs to the kitchen left me winded, a faint tightness creeping into my chest. My pulmonology training screamed warning signs, deep vein thrombosis possibly leading to a pulmonary embolism. I pressed my fingers to the sore spot on my leg, feeling the tenderness and knew the risks. But instead of speaking up, I stayed silent. This was the opportunity I'd been waiting for. If I hinted at feeling off and they brushed it aside, the cameras would record every word, every eye roll. I wasn't just enduring their neglect anymore, I was setting a trap to let them dig their own graves. I kept up the facade, hauling groceries and arranging chairs, each task heavier than it should have been. The ache in my leg grew sharper, and catching my breath took effort, but I pushed through knowing the stakes. Travis noticed something was wrong the second he walked in from his shift at the lab. His brows furrowed as he watched me pause, leaning against the counter to steady myself. "You look exhausted, Steph," he said quietly, setting down his keys. "You okay?" I forced a smile, adjusting the camera in my bag to ensure it was still recording. "Just tired from all this prep," I replied, my voice casual. "Don't say anything to Mom or Tiffany, okay? Let's see how they handle it." He hesitated, his eyes searching mine, but nodded, trusting me despite his concern. That evening, I called Danielle, my college roommate and lifeline. I sank onto the guest room bed, the phone pressed to my ear, and described the fatigue and leg pain in vague terms. "That doesn't sound right, Stephanie," she said, her voice sharp with worry. "You're a doctor. You know this could be serious. Get it checked out." I glanced at the tiny camera hidden on the shelf, its red light steady. "I'll rest tonight." I lied, deflecting her advice. "It's probably just stress from being back here." She pushed back, insisting I see a doctor, but I brushed it off, promising to monitor it. Hanging up, I lay back, my heart racing slightly, not just from the symptoms, but from the plan taking shape. If this was what I suspected, the dinner would be the perfect stage. By the morning of the dinner, the symptoms had worsened. A shower left me dizzy, forcing me to sit on the tub's edge to catch my breath. The calf pain now stabbed with each step, and a faint pressure lingered in my chest like a weight pressing down. I wrapped my leg in a compression bandage, popped some over-the-counter painkillers, and kept moving. My training told me to get to a hospital, but years of being called a liar drowned out that voice. Instead, I double-checked the cameras, ensuring their batteries were charged and their angles clear. The dining room looked festive, candles flickering, table set for 8, a spread of roast chicken and sides I'd prepped through sheer willpower. But every movement drained me, my breaths shallower than they should have been. Travis showed up early, carrying a cooler of drinks. He took one look at me, pale, moving slower than usual, and his face tightened. "Steph, you don't look good," he said, lowering his voice so Mom bustling in the kitchen wouldn't hear. "What's going on?" I shrugged, stacking plates to avoid his gaze. "Just a long week. Can you grab the napkins?" He didn't buy it. His hand hovering near his phone as if ready to call someone, but I shot him a look that said, "Not yet." I needed Mom and Tiffany to react first to say the words I knew were coming. The cameras were rolling and the trap was set. As guests began arriving, our grandmother, cousins Tiffany, with her usual critical sweep of the setup, the stage was ready. My symptoms were building, the pain sharper, my breaths harder to draw. This wasn't just a plan anymore. It was a race against my own body, and I was betting everything on their next mistake. The dining room glowed under the soft flicker of candles, the table laden with roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and green beans I'd spent hours preparing. The warmth of the fireplace battled the Minnesota chill seeping through the windows, but my body felt heavier with each passing minute. My calf throbbed sharper now, the pain pulsing in rhythm with my quickening heartbeat. Breathing felt like sipping air through a straw, shallow, unsatisfying. I knew the signs from my pulmonology training. A pulmonary embolism was closing in, the blood clot, likely breaking free from my leg. But as family members filed in, my grandmother, cousins Tiffany, with her usual critical glance at the table setting, I adjusted the hidden camera in my bag, its lens trained on the scene. This was it. The stage was set, and I was ready to let them expose themselves. I sat across from Mom, her sharp eyes scanning the spread as she nodded grudgingly. Tiffany, in her pressed blouse, took her seat with a faint smirk, already whispering to a cousin about my overdone decor. Travis slipped in last, his lab technician scrubs swapped for a sweater, his gaze lingering on me with that same worry from earlier. I gave him a subtle shake of my head, urging silence. The plan hinged on Mom and Tiffany reacting as they always had. To push the moment, I ate quickly, piling food onto my plate and swallowing fast, knowing it could trigger a choke to mask the worsening symptoms. My chest tightened further, each breath a conscious effort, but I kept my face neutral, waiting for their move. Halfway through the meal, it hit. A piece of chicken caught in my throat, amplifying the pressure in my chest. I coughed hard, my hands gripping the table as my vision blurred at the edges. The room quieted, forks pausing midair. Mom's eyes narrowed, her voice slicing through the silence. "Quit faking it, Stephanie," she snapped, setting her glass down with a thud. "You're not getting out of dishes with this act." Tiffany leaned forward, her tone dripping with disdain. "Always the same excuse to avoid cleanup. Can't you just eat like a normal person?" Their words caught on the camera's audio were exactly what I'd banked on. My face felt hot, my lips tingling as oxygen dwindled, but they sat unmoved, assuming another performance. I tried to speak to push the trap further, but my throat wouldn't cooperate. The choke wasn't just a ploy now, the embolism was peaking, a crushing weight in my lungs. I gasped, my hands clawing at the tablecloth, pulling a napkin to the floor. My face, I knew from my training, was turning purple, a telltale sign of cyanosis. Travis shot to his feet, his chair scraping loudly. "She's not faking," he shouted, his voice cracking with panic. Mom waved him off, her expression hardening. "Sit down, Travis. She's fine. She's always fine." But he ignored her, fumbling for his phone. "I'm calling 911, he said, dialing, as Tiffany scoffed. "You're buying into her drama now." The camera, still rolling, captured every second, Mom's dismissive glare, Tiffany's mocking laugh, the cousins' uneasy glances. My vision tunneled dark spots, dancing as I slumped forward, knocking a glass to the floor. It shattered, the sound jarring the room. Travis's voice rose urgent, giving our address to the dispatcher. "My sister can't breathe. She's collapsing." Mom stood, her arms crossed, muttering about embarrassment, but a flicker of doubt crossed her face as I wheezed, barely audible. "Grandmother Helen Ward." Her frail frame, tense at the table's end, finally spoke. "Karen, look at her. This isn't right." Her words, sharp and rare, cut through, but Mom only shook her head. Sirens wailed closer within minutes, a fast response typical for Minneapolis emergencies. The front door burst open and 2 EMTs rushed in, their equipment clattering. A young woman knelt beside me, her fingers finding my wrist. "Pulse is 140, thready, oxygen, SATs critical," she called to her partner, her voice tight with alarm. "Get the stretcher now." The room erupted, cousins scrambling back, chairs toppling. Mom froze, her face paling as the EMTs moved with practiced urgency, slipping an oxygen mask over my face. Tiffany backed against the wall, her earlier smirk gone. Travis stayed close, his hand on my shoulder, repeating, "Hang on, Steph." In the ambulance, the oxygen helped marginally, but each breath was a battle. The EMTs spoke in clipped tones, terms like cyanotic and tachycardic filtering through my haze. Travis rode with me, his face drawn as he answered their questions about my symptoms. At the hospital, a team whisked me through the ER doors, fluorescent lights blurring overhead. A doctor, her badge reading Dr. Ellis, leaned in, her voice steady. "Stephanie, we're running tests, but this looks like a pulmonary embolism, a blood clot in your lungs. You're lucky we got you here." She ordered a chest CT and heparin, her team moving fast. Later in the ER bay, she returned with the results. "Massive clot from your leg, blocked a major artery. If we'd been 30 minutes later, you wouldn't have made it." The cameras, still in my bag left at home, held the truth of that night. Mom and Tiffany's dismissals recorded, clear as day. As I lay there, monitors beeping, the gravity of their words sank in. They'd nearly let me die, but I had the evidence to make them face it. The trap had sprung, and what came next would unravel everything they thought they could control. The hospital room hummed with the steady beep of monitors, the sterile air sharp in my raw throat. I lay in the ER bay, an IV dripping heparin to dissolve the clot that had nearly stopped my lungs. My oxygen mask fogged with each labored breath, but the crushing pressure in my chest was easing barely. Travis sat beside me, his face pale, still in the sweater from dinner, his hand gripping mine. The doctor's words echoed 30 minutes later, and I'd have been gone. That truth fueled me now. My bag retrieved from home by a nurse held the cameras with every damning word from Mom and Tiffany recorded. As I steadied myself against the pillows, I opened my laptop, my fingers trembling, not from weakness, but from purpose. It was time to act. I uploaded the footage to a private cloud, editing clips from the dinner Mom's sharp "quit faking it" and Tiffany's sneering, avoiding cleanup again alongside older recordings from my notebook days. I spliced in voice memos from past visits, Mom dismissing my migraines as excuses, Tiffany laughing off my asthma as drama. The final cut was raw, unpolished, but undeniable, titled, "They Called It Faking." It was a pulmonary embolism. I posted it to social media with the hashtag #Chaya Medical Gaslighting, adding a caption urging viewers to trust their bodies and seek help. By morning, the video had exploded 10,000 views, then 50,000 shares flooding from Minneapolis to coasts I'd never seen. Comments poured in. This happened to me, and how could they ignore her? The internet's outrage became my weapon. The fallout hit fast. Mom, a nurse at the community clinic, was summoned by her supervisor within hours. The viral video showing her dismissing my collapse sparked an internal review. By noon, she was suspended pending investigation for professional misconduct patients, and colleagues had seen the clip, and the clinic couldn't ignore the PR storm. Tiffany, teaching 3rd grade at a local elementary, faced her own reckoning. Parents, alerted by the video's spread through community groups, filed complaints with the school board accusing her of enabling neglect. A petition circulated online, demanding her suspension for modeling dismissive behavior. Her principal called an emergency meeting, and whispers of termination followed. The cameras I'd hidden had done more than record. They'd ignited a fire. I didn't stop there. From my hospital bed, I contacted Child Protective Services, not just for the dinner, but for the years of medical neglect. I sent them my notebook digitized and time-stamped, detailing every ignored illness: strep throat at 7, broken arm at 13, asthma attacks dismissed as tantrums. The recordings spanning a decade backed it up. Mom's curt, "You're fine," Tiffany's mocking drama queen. CPS opened a case classifying it as long-term medical neglect, potentially actionable even for past incidents involving an adult. A lawyer friend of Danielle's offered pro bono advice, and we filed a formal complaint citing emotional and physical harm. The evidence was ironclad, and the legal wheels began turning slow but relentless. Back home, the family unraveled. Grandmother Helen Ward, who'd watched the video through a cousin's phone, called me in tears. "I should have stopped this years ago," she said, her voice shaky but firm. She confronted Mom, refusing to speak to her until she faced the truth. Helen invited Travis to live with her in her downtown condo, and he packed his bags that week, unable to stay in Mom's house after what he'd witnessed. Neighbors, once friendly at block parties, stopped inviting Mom and Tiffany, their whispers audible at the grocery store. The community that had propped up our family's image now shunned them, the viral video a stain they couldn't scrub. Mom tried to visit the hospital the next day, her face drawn, offering a halting apology. "I didn't know it was that serious, Stephanie," she said, avoiding my eyes. Tiffany sent a text claiming she was stressed and didn't mean it. I stared at them through the fog of my recovery, my chest still aching from the clot's damage. "You don't get to walk this back," I said, my voice steady despite the pain. "You almost let me die." I turned Mom away, deleted Tiffany's message, and blocked their numbers. Travis, still by my side, nodded silently, understanding my resolve. Danielle arrived from St. Paul, her hug careful around the IV lines, and promised to help me plan my next steps. My recovery was grueling, blood thinners left me bruised, and every twinge in my chest sparked fear of another clot. But as I lay there scrolling through the video's growing comments, I felt a shift. Thousands shared stories of being dismissed, their pain labeled as exaggeration. My story was no longer just mine. It was a call to action. I started responding, connecting with advocacy groups online, my inbox filling with messages from strangers who felt seen. Mom and Tiffany's world was collapsing, their careers and reputations in ruins, while I was building something new. The evidence I'd gathered for years, now public, had turned their gaslighting into their own undoing. As I closed my laptop, the monitors beeping softly, I knew this wasn't over. The fight was just beginning, and I was ready to take it further. 2 weeks after my hospital discharge, I packed my last box and left Minneapolis for St. Paul, moving into Danielle's spare bedroom in a quiet suburb. The small apartment with its hardwood floors and view of snow-dusted streets felt like a fresh start. I blocked Mom and Tiffany's numbers permanently, their half-hearted apologies from the hospital nothing but noise. Travis, now living with grandmother Helen in her downtown condo, stayed in touch through weekly calls, his voice a steady anchor. Helen sent texts filled with warmth, checking on my recovery, her regret for past silences clear in every word. But Karen and Tiffany, I was done. No reconciliation, no second chances. Their dismissal had nearly killed me, and I wasn't giving them power over my life again. My recovery was slow, a grind of blood thinners and follow-up scans. Fatigue lingered, and every chest twinge sent my heart racing, fearing another clot. But the viral video, now at 500,000 views, gave me purpose. Messages flooded my inbox, stories from women, men, even teenagers who'd been called dramatic when their symptoms screamed danger. I started a blog, Medical Gaslighting, sharing my story and theirs, linking to resources on recognizing neglect. Advocacy groups reached out, inviting me to speak at online panels. My pulmonology expertise made my voice resonate, and soon I was drafting a book proposal on surviving medical dismissal, blending science with raw experience. By spring, a publisher signed me and I landed a remote consulting gig with a healthcare nonprofit, my career rebounding stronger than before. Meanwhile, Mom's world collapsed. The clinic swamped with complaints after the video terminated her nursing license, after a board review confirmed professional misconduct. Her 30-year career built on discipline crumbled under the weight of her own words captured on tape. Tiffany faced her own ruin. The school board, pressured by parents' petitions, dismissed her from her teaching job, citing her role in enabling neglect as a breach of trust. Socially, they were pariahs, neighbors, who once waved at block parties now crossed the street. Travis told me Mom's house went quiet no more. Family dinners, no invitations. Their financial strain grew as legal fees piled up from my CPS case, which was moving toward a hearing. The notebook and recordings I'd sent detailing years of ignored illnesses made the neglect undeniable, and the case gained traction with a judge. I built my life anew in St. Paul. Weekly therapy helped unpack the trauma, not just the embolism, but the decades of doubt sewn into me. My book, published a year later, hit bestseller lists, and I spoke at medical conferences urging doctors to listen to patients' voices. The viral fame wasn't just a platform, it was a lifeline for others. I connected with survivors, helping them navigate their own fights for validation. Travis visited often, and Helen called regularly, their support a quiet strength. But Mom and Tiffany remained ghosts, cut off, their lives unraveling as mine soared. Looking back, I realized something critical gaslighting can kill. When those closest to you dismiss your pain, call it an act. It doesn't just hurt, it risks your life. My revenge wasn't petty, it was justice. Documenting their neglect, exposing it, wasn't about spite. It was about holding them accountable, ensuring they couldn't harm again. I learned to trust my body to record every sign, every dismissal, and to walk away from toxic ties without guilt. To anyone listening, your symptoms are real. If your family, friends, or even doctors brush them off, don't doubt yourself. Get help, see a specialist, and if the people around you won't listen, leave them behind. Your life is worth more than their denial. Thank you for hearing my story. It's not just mine, it's a call to trust yourself. If this resonates, hit that subscribe button and share your own experiences in the comments. Have you ever been dismissed when you knew something was wrong? Let's talk about it. Your voice matters.